All righty, we are live and recording. Oh, here we go. People are starting to filter in. We're going to give it just a few seconds. So, everyone, grab your beverage of choice, get a blanket, snuggle up, get cozy. I'm going to start in just a second. Just waiting for these participant numbers to slow down a little. Let's see here. All right. I'm going to go for it. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our little virtual event space. My name is Allie. I am the host for the evening, which is why I've got my Britney Spears, headset gear going on. I am so excited to be introducing Lily King and Laurie Frankel here to discuss Lily's book, Writers and Lovers. Before we get into the fun stuff, I just want to really quickly thank you all so much for tuning in and for buying books. Your guys' support really is what keeps this place going, and we really love what we do. So if you also love what we do, come on in. Come grab copies. We love to see you, and we are definitely open. But if you're not local or you just don't want to leave the house, I get it. We do ship. Shipping is just $3.50 for the first book, and then $1 per book on top of that, and you get to support USPS too, which is a fun added bonus. I will be linking books in the chat throughout this event, so it'll be really easy to find our website. While you're over on the website, I definitely recommend checking out some of our other upcoming events. We've got some really exciting people coming through in the next, few days as well as few months. So come see who's coming in. And of course, while you are over there, maybe sign up for the newsletter. It'll remind you who's coming through, as well as tell you maybe about book recommendations or, any bookish updates that we've got when our used counter opens, that sort of thing. And of course, you can always follow us on social media for the quickest updates and recommendations. We are at Third Place Books on pretty much everything, even TikTok. And, we have like a good time on social media. So go check it out, see if it's for you. And, it's fun because you kind of get to know some of the people working in the bookstore and not, to talk about my too complimentary to my wonderful coworkers, but they have really good taste, so go and check those out. So we are here for about an hour, and towards the end we will be taking questions, and I am seeing that people are already discovering the chat, which I absolutely love. But definitely, keep using that. Tell us where you're from. I love to see your comments, connect with each other. It's so much fun. But definitely, once it comes time for questions, throw those in the separate Q&A box. You can see down at the bottom or up at the top of your screen, there is a Q&A box, and that is where we want your questions so that when it comes time, they are easy to find. And I think that is all of my housekeeping. So without further ado, Lily King is the author of The Pleasing Hour, The English Teacher, Father in the Rain, and Euphoria, which was one of New York Times Book Review's 10 Best Books of 2014 and won a Kirkus. Her newest novel, Writers and Lovers, is about a young woman's determination to live a creative life. Even as she transitions from her 20s into her 30s and has to contend with growing up. This book was selected by multiple big popular book clubs and was a New York Times Book Review's group text selection, and which I just recently started reading, and was in love on the very first page. So, this one sits close to my heart. And Laurie Frankel is the New York Times bestselling award-winning author of The Atlas of Love, Goodbye for Now, and the Reese's Book Club Hello Sunshine book club pick, This Is How It Always Is, which is another one that is just such a wonderful book. And there's a poster of it hanging in our break room. According to her bio, she makes good soup, which as a soup lover, I felt compelled to include, and has a new novel coming up in June called 123, which I am very much looking forward to. So thank you both so much for being here. I am so excited to be a fly on the wall of this conversation. If you need anything, of course, shout. That goes for everyone in the audience as well. I will be, perusing comments. So if anything goes wrong, let me know. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave you in their capable hands. So I will see you soon.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that we're doing this. I feel like we should start by just welcoming everyone and thanking you all for being here. It's really a privilege, I think, to talk to people on both coasts and everything in between all at once. And I wish you were here, Lily, because we're having our one sunny day that we'll get for the next 3 months, and you're missing it, which is but I'm so glad we get to do this, however virtually.
Me too.
And I'm really grateful that everybody else is here as well. Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Such an honor.
It is truly my pleasure. I mean, in fact, I've been stressing a little bit about doing this interview because I loved this book so much. And sometimes it's easier to talk about books that you had mixed feelings about, whereas this book, I just want to say, how great was this book? Are you a genius? And that's awesome, but it's not a great conversation. So I had to make some notes about what we might talk about. I read this book more than a year ago, and this book, in fact, first came out more than a year ago, I guess about a year ago, and
it came out a year ago today.
Oh, happy birthday, happy book birthday! It's been quite a year.
Yeah. It has been a year.
It has been a year, and the world has changed a lot. So I read the book when it first came out, and then I read it again this week because we were going to do this, and it just struck me as a very different book. It's and of course you wrote it before it came out, so I wonder, just to kick us off, how this book feels different to you after the year we've just had.
I don't know. I would love to turn that back to you, to be honest with you, because I haven't read it again. I mean, I've been talking about it, and I think what really struck me when the book came out, and then something like 12 days later, my kids came home from college, and the world shut down. Bookstores all over the country shut down, and obviously, as we know, people started dying, and and restaurants shut down, and people started getting very, very worried about their livelihood. And I never think about my characters as people outside of the book. I don't imagine their lives past the end of the book. And I had this incredibly kind of protective feeling about Casey, which was so strange to me. But I was like, well, thank God this didn't happen when Casey was, when the book was happening. Casey would have been, I don't even know. I mean, she's already in so much financial trouble as it is, not to mention emotional, and so I felt super protective of her for some weird, freaky reason. And I don't know. It was all I can say about the whole book stuff, and having bookstores close when you're trying to publish a book and everything, is that bookstores around this country just were miracle workers. I mean, so many of them did not have an online business, certainly did not have a whole technical arm of their operation to suddenly become a television studio. And yet within weeks, I mean, 2 weeks, 1 week, it all switched, and you could order books, and you could see, you could have Zooms and see authors talking about books, and we kind of all came together in that way, and that was really, really extraordinary to see. And everyone, so many people around this country in so many ways were just adapting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. It resonated this book resonated in so many ways. The bookstore stuff, the restaurant stuff, but also it is in many ways a book about mourning, and that unfortunately, is a place where so many people are right now. I thought it was a weepier book this time through.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It was interesting. And I also felt, it's funny that you say protective, because I felt a little bit jealous because here's Casey in this room all by herself, and like that she has no children and like nobody to cook dinner for. And I was like, oh, that sounds really lovely to be in her tiny, moldy, disgusting room. It was just interesting.
Yeah, that is very
things about space. In general, actually, maybe you should tell us about so much is very interesting about the setting in this book, the late 90s-ness of it, and the Boston Cambridge-ness of it, and the tiny moldy roomness of it. You made so many interesting decisions about setting them going.
Yeah.
Do you want to? I mean, so some of my question is, gosh, why 1997? And then it kind of goes from there.
I didn't even know it was 97 when I started. When I first got the idea for the book, it was Casey in the driveway with her, disheveled hair and slippers, and the dog, and then Adam, the polished lawyer, coming out, landlord coming out, to go to his meeting, and I didn't know when that was. And then at the end of the chapter, she has a message on her answering machine. And I was like,
right.
Oh, okay. She doesn't own a cell phone, and she has an answering machine. I mean, I didn't know any of that. But of course it made more sense to me to write about that time, of course, because Casey is a contemporary of mine. And so it was easier to write about someone being 30 in an environment that I remember being 30 in. And so, and I always knew that she was going to be in the Boston area, and I saw the Charles, and I saw the restaurant, and so I kind of went from there.
30 is a really interesting age for what is essentially, in many ways, a coming of age novel. I feel like coming of age novels are often about 21-year-olds rather than 31-year-olds.
Right.
That's very interesting too.
I kind of object to it being called a coming of age novel. I mean, it says it on the flap, I'm sure. It's not like, everybody says that, and somebody said recently, that it was a coming of age novel for late bloomers, which maybe I can see, but really, I mean, she's an adult, she's not becoming an adult. She is an adult. She has just made choices that other adults her age are not making, or she has refused to make the kind of compromises or whatever that she feels that other adults her age are making. And the truth is, she's an adult, but she doesn't have a salary. She's an adult, but she doesn't have a partner. I don't know. And so I kind of wonder, what is this coming of age? Is it just like becoming successful? Is it becoming like other people? Less of an odd duck? I'm not really sure why it's called I mean, she figures some things out about her life, but she was an adult before the book started, and I don't know.
That's so interesting. It's so interesting that you object to that. In fact, I think it's not in my mind, it's not the adultness at all. It's it's the writerness. It's that she, at the beginning, she, you know, she wants to write this book, and so in many ways it's like the coming of age is really the journey of the book.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to talk about the book. I mean, we have to talk about
kind of
all the things.
coming into herself, you know, coming into some sort of, you know, I don't know, acceptance of her own abilities and potential and, you know, confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So interesting. All right, why don't you read us a little bit, and
okay.
then we'll chit chat.
Okay. So I'm just going to start at the beginning so I don't really have to explain very much.
Right, sure.
31. I have a pact with myself not to think about money in the morning. I'm like a teenager trying not to think about sex, but I'm also trying not to think about sex or Luke or death, which means not thinking about my mother who died on vacation last winter. There's so many things I can't think about in order to write in the morning. Adam, my landlord, watches me walk his dog. He leans against his Benz in a suit and sparkling shoes as I come back up the driveway. He's needy in the morning. Everyone is, I suppose. He enjoys his contrast to me in my sweats and untamed hair. When the dog and I are closer, he says, "You're up early." I'm always up early. So are you, I say. Meeting with the judge at the courthouse at 7 sharp. Admire me, admire me, admire judge at the courthouse and 7 sharp. Somebody's got to do it, I say. I don't like myself around Adam. I don't think he wants me to. I let the dog yank me a few steps past him toward a squirrel squeezing through some slats at the side of his big house. So, he says, unwilling to let me get too far away, how's the novel? He says it like I made the word up myself. He's still leaning against his car and turning only his head in my direction, as if he likes his pose too much to undo it. It's all right. The bees in my chest stir. A few creep down the inside of my arm. One conversation can destroy my whole morning. I've got to get back to it. Short day, working a double. I pull the dog up Adam's back porch, unhook the leash, nudge him through the door, and drop quickly back down the steps. How many pages you got now? A couple of 100, maybe. I don't stop moving. I'm halfway to my room at the side of his garage. You know, he says, pushing himself off his car, waiting for my full attention. I just find it extraordinary that you think you have something to say. I sit at my desk and stare at the sentences I wrote before walking the dog. I don't remember them. I don't remember putting them down. I'm so tired. I look at the green digits on the clock radio, less than 3 hours before I have to dress for my lunch shift. Adam went to college with my older brother, Caleb. In fact, I think Caleb was a little in love with him back then. And for this, he gives me a break in my rent. He shaves off a bit more for walking his dog in the morning. The room used to be a potting shed and still has a loam and rotting leaves smell. There's just enough space for a twin mattress, desk and chair and hot plate and toaster oven in the bathroom. I set the kettle back on the burner for another cup of black tea. I don't write because I think I have something to say. I write because if I don't, everything feels even worse.
Nice job.
Thank you.
We would all be applauding if we were there. So it's such a beautiful opening. It's such a beautiful first chapter. It's very compelling.
Oh, good.
I feel like usually when you do conversations like this, you have to either talk about the book or you have to do a craft talk. And those two things are not the same thing. But
Yeah.
in this case, those two things are really, really close together, which means we get to do both, which is
You're
great. And this passage and so many passages, one of the things that strikes me over and over again in this book is how precarious you present novel writing. That there's so much that can derail it.
Right.
She's yes. I mean, so much. Yes. The first question is, in fact, about like what your writing day looks like. So maybe you'll talk about that and how it is or is not like Casey's. But also, I just think about how I mean, she's more protective of them than the children she encounters. But they strike me as the same sort of thing. Like her writing is like a toddler, where she has to be really, really careful because all of these disasters might befall it, and it's so important that they not.
Mhm.
So maybe you talk about her writing process and your writing process, and then we can talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I definitely borrowed from my impulses and experiences as a writer to kind of create her writing, her feelings about writing and the way she writes. I mean, I'm definitely a morning writer like her. Um, I feel like um, it is so hard to protect your writing time, especially as a woman. I think that people um, they don't really think that uh, I they just don't think of it as work. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. I mean, really, people I know really well who know for a fact that I write, from whatever 8 or 9 in the morning to 2, will so often ask me to go to lunch. Like, or that used to happen. Doesn't happen anymore. Let me tell you. Or they'd ask me to, work out with them or go for a walk or something at 10 in the morning. And over and over and over. I mean, like, it's just, it is interesting to me that 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 doesn't get respected. And it's very easy for me to capitulate in lots of small ways, especially with my children. They come first, and that they have to come first, and that is just the way it is. But I really try to preserve that. That said, I feel like such a phony right now because I haven't written in so long, like really written, like really struggled with a new novel. Since this book came out, I feel like I've been doing a lot of Zooms, and I've been editing another book that comes out later this year. And I just, I like, this is the desk. I'm touching the desk right now that I'm on, and basically I've just been doing Zooms and editing on it. And I can't really say that I'm a writer right now.
I think you can. I really do.
I hope to get back to it.
Well, tell us about you have a book coming out in November.
Oh, I'm excited about that. It's a collection of short stories. So again, I wrote it over years and years, and I don't feel like I wrote it right now. But I'm excited because I've just had a lot of stories sitting around for a while, and it feels good to get them into something, and to create a collection and to think about all of the different things that go into that. But I should get back to my writing process because, I write just like Casey, and I do have, a little show and tell situation here with my.
Oh, good.
I always write, by hand with pen and pencil. I mean, with a pencil, ever since I was in high school. And so, I just, I really like being able to cross out, and I just like that first draft is always so hard, but it's also the place where I give myself permission to just write whatever, because it's not on the computer. I'm not polishing it. I can just like blah, and I can cut it out, and I know that it won't go onto the next draft, which will be the computer, and that's very helpful to me, to know that. And then I can take notes in the back, and then just one other thing about my craft, which I don't think that Casey mentioned this, but this is like a timeline. And so I usually do this at the very beginning, and I just write little ideas. They're not like chapters. It's not organized in that way, but it's chronological of how I want it to appear in the novel. And so it just kind of gives me a little bit of a roadmap. And I usually end up not following it, and I usually don't even look at it by the end or even by halfway through. But it helps me at the beginning kind of know something about where I'm headed. And a lot of times I'll go there and it won't work, and then and then I just scrap it and I go in another direction. But this is like my security blanket for the first 2/3 of the book, and then I'm okay. So that's a little bit about how I put it together, and then it goes on the computer, and then I can do lots of good kind of creating, but also editing, and your creative brain and your critical brain can kind of work together, and I really, really like that process. And then draft after draft after draft.
Casey talks about an underpainting. And I love that idea. I thought it was a really great metaphor. Is that you got to get down the kind of outline of it and the bones of it, and then layer and layer and layer and layer. Is your timeline that underpainting?
Yeah. I mean, it's a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of an underpainting. It's like
Yeah.
little tiny dots almost, here and there where things could be. But yeah, that scene where she talks about the underpainting, it's just this idea, and it's something I have told myself for many novels, because when you're writing that first novel, you feel like you're like it's so big, and you're just messing it up. Like every day I feel like I'm messing it up, right? And so I have to tell myself that an artist does not go from the left side of the canvas to the right side of the canvas, just perfectly creating that painting. There's like vroom and vroom and vroom, and maybe I'll put something over here and da 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 da. And then, over the course of time and years, in a novel's case at least, you're just adding color, and you're adding layers, and you're taking things away, and you have to think about it in that way, that it is something that you're just slowly creating, layer after layer, with time, and with just going over it, and adding things and getting it right, and you just have to trust, and I think that's really hard.
It's really hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard. And you did I thought, just a beautiful job of capturing how hard and frankly terrifying it is. And yet it also, so that it is, it's not just the roller coaster of it, though that too, but like the out and out contradiction that on the one hand, it's panic inducing for her, and she can't look at it sometimes, and she can't talk about it, and she can't think about it. And then on the other hand, it's the thing that's saving her, and the
Yeah.
thing that's grounding her, and the thing that's seeing her through.
Yeah, and she really doesn't recognize that for a while, does she?
No, it takes her a long time, but it's a really beautiful thing. Oh,
Now, like, can I just ask you your process? Would you say that is similar, or do you have an entirely different process?
no, that's exactly what it is. It's a lot of panicking. It's terrible, horrible first drafts, and then revising and revising and revising and revising. And I don't even get to have a timeline, though I think I'm going to from now on, because indeed, I just feel I'm so long. I have no idea what's happening in this thing for the first many drafts.
And are you working off of notes? Like, do you have certain things written down that
I
help you?
sometimes, and sometimes not. The only thing I think I do differently is I don't handwrite anything. And in fact, I would say, in fact, I was going to say I would say, but in fact, I think I have said that it's because my first drafts are so terrible that I feel like, no, it has to get into a computer so I can start cutting, basically. And so it's very interesting to me that you write that out by hand.
I just think the computer makes things look prematurely polished,
Oh gosh, that's because your computer must not look like mine. It's a lot of color coding and sticky notes and things that I've put like electronic post-its in the margins, such as "This is so terrible, make it suck less." It definitely does not look polished.
That's really bad.
Yeah. Was it hard to write about something that that you sort of live in a day in, day out kind of a way? Like, was it harder or easier to write about something that you are so like forest for the trees full? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I think it was easy-ish.
Yeah.
But there was always that nagging feeling like, who is going to be interested in this? Nobody's going to care. This is incredibly boring. Like, so that never made me feel like I was writing something good. It was easy, but it wasn't a good feeling.
It's very interesting that you say that, because watching someone write is very boring. It's not an exciting job. It's just putting your butt in a chair for hours on end. And yet you made this very, very interesting. How did you do that? You don't know.
Maybe it's just, I hope it's not just because you are a writer, but
Well, I've recommended this book to literally everyone I know, and everyone has loved it. So it's not just me.
okay, thank you. That's nice.
Do you want to talk about writing versus waiting tables, or writing versus playing golf, or writing versus gambling, or writing versus teaching writing, all of which get great exploration in this novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that the way, she waits tables at night and she writes in the morning, and it just really works, until it doesn't work, it works with her schedule really well. And I did feel when I was a young aspiring writer writing my first novel that waiting tables was just the best. I did it a gazillion times in so many different restaurants. And um once I started at Burger King, and that was very not good pay.
Wow.
You climb up the ladder and you get to a fancy restaurant, and then you're bringing home a lot of cash at night, and that's a great thing, especially on the weekends. And then you kind of have your head clear if you don't stay too long and drink too much at the bar. You have your head clear the next morning to do your work, and you're not saddled with English papers, like you are when you're a teacher, because I became a high school English teacher, and and did a lot of teaching in a lot of different ways. But the stacks of papers that you bring home to grade are endless, and they take up the same energy and brain power that you need to edit your own stuff. And so I found that waiting tables really worked much better for me. And so anyway, I wanted to give that to Casey, and I like the way that you never sit in a chair when you're waiting tables. Your shifts are 8-10 hours, and you're on your feet the whole time. It's excellent exercise. You're making friends. It's super social. So it does all these things that writing can't give you.
Yeah.
And so I liked giving that to the reader, because the reader doesn't want to sit there with her all day, and they don't want to go into the classroom either. And so it was a good place to take her.
Yeah.
And then golf, I thought there was going to be more golf with this book. So Casey is a kind of a junior golf prodigy. She was raised by her father, who was a good golf player, a golfer, I guess you would call it. I have so little familiarity with golf. I don't even
You totally sold me. I thought, oh, this woman definitely is a golfer, a golf champion.
Said that to me. People are like, "What? You didn't compete when you were young?" I've held a golf club twice in my life, probably. It's
such a good detail. It's just a beautiful. It works so well. And
good.
It's just such a really cool detail. So you have, tell us.
Well, I had this idea that she was going to do a lot more golfing in this novel. And so I got a stack of golfing books. I got John Updike's essays about golfing, and I got Tiger Woods' father's memoir about raising Tiger, and which I thought would be helpful.
Sure.
I just could not get through those books. I couldn't do it. I don't like golf. I don't want to read about golf. So I scrapped all my golf scenes and just wrote a mini golf scene, and and then a flashback that my editor made me write that I did not want to write. But she felt like I needed to go back and have a little bit with her and the father in golf. So I did. But I did it as minimally as I possibly could, because I don't like big flashbacks in general. And I really don't like golf flashbacks. Maybe my least favorite thing, which you don't see very often, are golf flashbacks. But
no. In fact, I think yours might be the only one I can name. In fact, I'm pretty certain of it.
I don't know. I bet Updike has some golf flashbacks.
I bet Updike does have some. Although, in fact, this essay collection was news to me, so I have to go back and find it. Is it good?
Well, he can write anything. I mean, he can even make golf look good. So.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, that's lovely, because it works really beautifully. It's good because it'll help us talk about her dad, and in fact her parents, both of whom loom large in this book, both of whom are something of a mixed bag. She has very different feelings about each of them,
Yeah.
but neither of them is perfect,
Yeah.
and neither of them is purely evil either, which of course is why you write such beautiful characters. Um, did you have? And I guess one of the other thing I want to talk about. See, this is the English teacher in me. What if we compare and contrast that with the romantic interests? One of the things I kept coming back to is the writers and lovers, and I thought, well, it could be writers and parents. It could be writers and waiters, and there are all sorts
Right,
of
right.
ands. You do a really beautiful job of characters who are this very mixed bag.
Mm. Well, I mean, people are mixed bags, right? I've never met someone who wasn't a mixed bag.
No, never.
and it is, it is what you're aiming for. And I don't know. I mean, someday I'd really like to write like a good, solid father, like a father who is there for his child. I have not done that yet.
No.
It's a challenge, and I'm setting myself out to do that. So, in my novels, you can pretty much expect there to be an absent father, or a really, a father that a child has then got to spend a lot of the beginning of her adult life getting over, or kind of,
Yes.
overcoming the damage that has been done. And so I feel the reason, obviously, Casey struggles with love is, what has happened in the past with love. She in with both parents, she's sort of has abandonment issues. Um,
Yep.
They just were not always there for her in different ways. And so how do you've come from a history, that's all you really know about love, right? Is just sort of an imperfect, unreliable, occasional love. And then you're supposed to find your person. I just think that's really, really hard. And she was really struggling with that. And I do feel that she figured some stuff out, during in the course of these pages. Uh, and it was kind of hard won.
It was hard won.
Yeah.
And yet I think she's stronger and smarter and has better instincts than she gives herself credit for.
Yeah.
I always wanted to like pat her on the back, like, okay, good decision, good decision. That was big thumbs up. She struggles with romance, but in fact, she has great friendships.
Yeah. Yeah, she does have great friendships, which I think is so, important to give to your characters.
Yeah, why?
Friendships are so important to me. And I mean, I feel so Muriel is her writer friend, and I feel like I've had 10 Muriels in my life, and they are just so crucial to making you feel like you're not crazy for doing what you're doing, and supporting you, and having it be a real mutual friendship, that's both a personal friendship and a professional friendship.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know that she's, even when Casey has challenges, I wasn't too worried for her because she had these friends. So it was very comforting to me as a while I'm watching her, because I want to take her home with me and cook her soup. That I think, oh no, she's going to be fine. She has these friends. She has these people who will feed her. Okay, we have lots of questions in 20 minutes. I have lots more questions, but maybe we should let other people ask some questions.
Okay. Let me just add something about the friendship. I'm just realizing
please.
this now, is that a lot of books about writers, they're super loners,
Right.
and they really are alone with their, ambitions, and so it is interesting that she does have these friends. I've never really thought about that before. I can't think of another of course, whenever I think of a female writer in a novel, it's always Jean Reese, you know.
Yes, right.
No friends for Jean Reese, you know.
No, and not a great role model for Casey, certainly. To aspire to be happy while doing this. It's it. I think it is also a really useful sort for her. Like, this person is my friend because they are supportive of my writing. They're going to help me. They're going to help me do this thing that is so important to me, that I know that that person is a good person because they're supporting her endeavor to write a book. It is, I love so much of this book. It is possible my favorite moment of the whole thing is when she's like, I cannot date that guy because he's only written 11 pages in the last 6 years. And that is contagious. And I thought, well, that's totally true. And also, that's really good decision making. Hysterical. So true and so funny. Okay.
Yeah.
We have people with questions. Okay, we answered this question about the writing process, so that was great. Okay. Trent wants to talk about patterns of 3, which is super interesting. Always with writers, 3, everything is 3.
Yes,
particularly in the love triangle in Euphoria, and then the love triangle here, not necessarily a triangle, but Casey, Oscar, and Silas.
Yeah.
How do you do patterns?
It's true. I mean, even within my sentences, I often have 3, you know, and my editor on the side, I don't even do it anymore because I know what she's going to say. Choose 1, choose 2, you know, do not keep all 3. I think that is true. And what's funny about this is that I tried to add another guy into the whole thing. And so it was actually going to be more of a love square, you know, but my agent and editor were like, enough men. You know? No, really, nobody's going to believe this at this point. And so it was too many men. And in fact, there were a couple more in the past too. And you know, they were just like, stop. I'm like, she's 31, you know?
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
But they felt like it was an overload. So it became a love triangle.
Yeah.
In a way.
Do you revise big and then get shorter, or revise? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you?
Yeah.
I ask everyone, like, your drafts are big and then they get.
No, I add. I often have to add. Yeah. There was though, because that scene that you liked with the guy George.
Yeah.
He went into the first draft that my agent, my editor never even saw. He became. We went off, and you know, he came back to visit several times, and it was terrible. Like, those scenes were really bad, and it took me a while to figure out I can just take that right out, and he can ask her out, and she can be like, you're contagious, and that was that. It was so much better.
So great. I loved it. I couldn't have loved it more.
So that's a rare situation where, like, you know, I had maybe 20 pages and I cut it down to a paragraph, and that feels great. But most of the time it's like, I haven't told enough.
I see. Interesting.
You know, so I have to force myself to write scenes, just like Casey has to write the rape scene.
Yeah.
I have to force myself to write scenes that I didn't want to write, but I suddenly realized, okay, you gotta do this. You can't just, like, you know, refer in a little pretty sentence to that, you know, that's got to be a whole chapter.
Interesting.
And that's what I usually have to end up doing.
What about you?
You cut down, or do you expand?
I have to cut down. I mean, I have to cut more words than I'm ever going to end up including. Like hundreds of thousands of words that I have to end up cutting. And you are very spare. You write very sparingly in a way that I try every day to cause to happen in my life. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, George wants to know about point of view. Did you go into this knowing it was going to be first person? Yeah. Did you ever consider something else? And to that, I would personally add present tense, which is also very interesting.
I think. Well, hold on. Yeah. So my first draft right here, it's in it's in past tense. So I changed it. And let me just flip to like page 21. Oh no, that's a flashback. Hold on. Yeah, that's all past tense. All past tense. The whole thing is past tense. My first draft, turns out. I don't even remember. And then, but it was all first person. And I did play around. I know that I took that first paragraph that I read, and I changed it third person, first person, past tense, present tense, and then kind of slowly. That often happens to me with my novels. I often explore after I've written a first draft. I explore how else I might tell it. And then I pretty quickly, I think, though, landed on keeping the first person and switching it to present tense. And it was all, I remember now. It was all that first paragraph, which is not in my very, very first draft. I added it later. It was all, hold on. Let me just see the first thing. I have a pact with myself not to think about money in the morning. That was just better to me in present tense rather than past tense. And so like, I will make whole novel decisions based on that first page. That first page is so important to me that I will sacrifice everything for that.
Isn't that amazing? It is. It's so, it is so important. It just,
it is.
It is. Yeah.
Because if I go to a bookstore, I will not read the flap, cannot bear the flap. I'll just read that first paragraph in a store. If I like it, I buy it. If I don't, it's the end. And I know people are doing that to me.
Yeah, for sure.
And also it sets the tone. It makes me feel good. Like when I have a first page that I really like, then I can keep going. It bolsters me a lot. And it has to bolster me for like 4 years,
Right. Yes, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah.
All of these decisions, actually, point of view and tense and setting, you have to live with it for forever and ever. Some people want to know about the title also, how you landed on this title, which is always an interesting question. Is it yours?
Is it mine?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle of the first draft, I realized that I needed a title. Honestly, I don't think about a title for a long time. I don't really care about a title. And I knew I wanted an ampersand, I wanted a something and something. That came first. It was the and then
interesting.
What was going to go there. And I think I made a list of like 10 different options, and most of them had writers and lovers in it in some combination. I wish I had that list somewhere. I don't know where it is, but writers and lovers sounded the best to me. And so I made that decision probably, I don't know, 2 minutes or something. Yeah. And then I spent a long time trying to convince my editor and my agent that this was the title of the book.
What was their objection?
Books about writers don't sell. Like, please don't do that. Do not do that.
Interesting.
Nobody wants to read a book called Writers and Lovers. So,
but they were so wrong, because everyone has wanted to read this book.
I'm just so relieved.
Yeah.
I kept saying, this is what I say every single book. Every single time we have an argument about the cover or the title or something, I'm like, but I would love that.
That's right.
If I saw a book in a bookstore called Writers and Lovers, I would want that book so badly. And, they're like, you are not who we're going for. Right, yes. You are not the demographic.
I am, though. I am the demographic, and I definitely buy that book. I mean, especially when it has your name on it, but I would buy it anyway. That is a very interesting thing. In fact, we have lots of questions here about writing about writers. Is it cathartic? Laura wants to know, is it a cathartic choice to write about writing?
I don't know. It didn't feel cathartic at the moment. No. And it wouldn't feel cathartic if every writer I knew wrote me and said, this is not my experience. You got it all wrong. If I felt like, I don't know. I didn't think about anybody reading it when I was writing it, especially other writers. that would have been terrifying for me to think of other writers reading the book. But I guess you know, in the way, it wasn't so much cathartic for me to write about writing, because of course there's so much more to say, and it's the tip of the iceberg and blah 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 blah. But it was cathartic to write about grief, because my mother had died right before I started the book. In fact, I was writing something else entirely, and my mother died very suddenly, much like Casey's in the book, you know, when she went off in full health on vacation and died. And I really don't know why.
Oh,
And
I'm so sorry.
it was terrible. It was
It's
just
terrible.
terrible. And I was writing another book, and I never, ever, ever could open that cover of that notebook again, and didn't write for 7 or 8 months. And then I started in on this. This just kind of came to me, and I needed a place where I could put those feelings about my mom, and or just feelings about grieving and what that felt like to try to carry on. And to I just needed a character who was going through that. And that was really, truly cathartic. It really, really was, to be able to write scene and dialogue, and to kind of preserve those feelings in the way that I like to preserve feelings. You know, it wasn't really working for me just to write it in a journal. So
Yeah. It is one of the remarkable things I think about this book is that she doesn't get over it. I think so often the character arc is character's really upset, character learns and grows and makes peace with it.
yeah,
And of course she's never going to ever make peace with that, and she just has to sit with it. And I felt very touched by that.
yeah. I mean, I think with grieving, it's so different than other kinds of sadness, you know, or shock or anything. And you know, it just comes in these huge waves, and then when that wave is over, you know, like I didn't go into a depression or anything. It's so different than being kind of chronically sad. You know, you feel it, and then it recedes, and then you carry on, and then you get wave, you know. And then slowly, as time goes on, the waves are not as big, and they don't last as long, and you just you suddenly, you know, you're living kind of like you used to live, you know. But boy, are you hobbled for so long. Really, I'll just never forget what that felt like. Oh.
No, of course you are. And it's why it was you know, it just seems so. I think this is also why it felt coming of agey to me. Like these are the things that are going to define this woman for the rest of her life, Casey. You know, like these things are never going to go away for her. And
Yeah.
And that's and your insistence that we sit with that, it was really, I thought, very remarkable.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Laura wants to know how pandemic writing has changed, how pandemic has changed your writing routine. She's saying she used to write in coffee shops, which of course no one is ever writing in coffee shops.
Can I tell you, that is what we talk about in this house. My husband is also a writer, and we had 4 months or maybe 5 months of empty nesting. Our kids, you know, our younger child went to college last, you know, a year ago this fall. And so we had from September to March, and we started going to our favorite coffee shop, you know, down the road at like between 5 and 7 at night. Like, honestly, we'd never, ever been free between 5 and 7 at night. And it was it's still enchanting to think of, you know, just us sitting there, and we'd actually see, we would see friends of my daughters, you know, who are a year younger, like, you know, doing their senior year stuff, and there we would be. I don't know. Anyway, I miss that so much. I miss coffee shop writing. There is something very, very sacred and special about coffee shop writing. Yeah. I have written some of my favorite things in public places. No. And sometimes, you know, you get there and the music's wrong and the people next to you are driving you crazy, and you have it's very hit or miss, but I do miss that a lot. And I really haven't been writing any, like, I've written so little during the pandemic that I'm embarrassed to even talk about it.
I think it's one of the things I here in Seattle, we have lots of coffee shops, and I think this is what's going to save them is that people like to write there. And so even though they've been closed for a year, which is such a long and terrible time for these small businesses, it's going to be okay because once we are all let out of the house, no one is going to want to be in their house ever again. They're only going to want to write in coffee shops.
I know. I keep on thinking about the Roaring Twenties, and now I understand why they were roaring.
Why they were roaring. I can't wait to roar. It's gonna be
I know. Really. And yet, I don't know if I can roar. Have we forgotten to roar?
Well, indeed. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see. I feel like I am not prepared to go out into the world. I've become terrified of other people at this point. And just like being places in person, it's going to be an adjustment.
Yeah.
All right. We got like 3 minutes, and somebody wants to know my favorite question that people ask, which is, what are you reading? What are your favorite? She's asked, what are your favorite books? And I, and that's always a fun question to answer. Or if you prefer, what you're reading now in this time of plague.
I'm all over the place. I feel like I'm reading like 5 books at once. I'm reading Hamnet. I'm reading Chiang-Mai Lee's My Year Abroad. Did you love Hamnet?
I loved it.
Okay, I'm not very far in, and I'm really liking it. And I'm really excited to just dig in.
I mean, owing to nothing but pure coincidence, I read it right before I read yours, and so they're married in my brain. They hold hands really in my brain together. They don't really have anything to do with each other though, so that's not going to help you.
I'm trying to think like the favorite book thing is so hard. I mean, I know 2 books. Where are they? Oh yeah. On top of my desk, which are Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse and Shirley Hazard's The Evening of the Holiday. Those are kind of my 2 Bibles, and I can pick them up anywhere, turn to any page and be like, and read one page and remember why I write, and that's really, really important to me. So I love, love, love those books. I'm a huge Toni Morrison fan. I just read Song of Solomon and was just staggered by how good it is. And I love, love, love Beloved, probably is my very favorite. And Elizabeth Strout's My Name is Lucy Barton, I think is just a miraculous work of genius. I loved Old Filth by Jane Gardam. I love Tessa Hadley. Who's an English writer, and Rachel Cusk and Ali Smith. I love Colm Toybean. So many.
Yeah. Did you read is it a quartet?
I've read
Ali Smith's.
I've read 3. I have not read Summer. Yeah, I haven't read Summer yet.
I read 3, but I think one of them was Summer. I think I missed Spring.
I liked.
Did you like Spring?
Yeah, Autumn I think is my favorite so far. I thought Autumn was just incredible.
I think me too. And I think I read Autumn first. Is that the first one?
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, me too. I love all of her stuff. But somehow I missed one of them. I guess it's been quite a year.
I saw online. I think it was Hillary Kelly who posted the English. I had never seen the English covers. They're all David Hockney, and they're so.
I know they are amazing.
Them. Why didn't the American version do that?
I don't know the answer to that question. And I think I was reading that they kind of threw it out to ask him to do this, and he was overjoyed. He was thrilled to do it, which is such an amazing thing.
Wow.
Yeah. It made me think, like, who do I want to call and just say, hey, can you paint paintings for my, what very famous artist is out there secretly willing to do book covers that I just didn't know.
They're reproductions of things that he's already done. You think they're originals?
I think he made them for her, yeah, or for the books. So amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so it's 9:00. In fact, it's 9:01 where you are. So I feel like we have to let you go. But this was really, really, really great. And
Really
next time you come in person, and we can't wait to see you in person.
That would be so fun. I cannot wait.
Me too.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you guys so much for being here. This was such a wonderful conversation. I was cackling the whole time. Couldn't hear me, but I love so much listening to writers talk about writing. I am one of the people who will read a whole book about writing. So it's for me. That's who it's for. It's for me. So thank you guys so much for being here. Audience members, of course, thank you as always for being here. Sign up for that newsletter, see who else is coming through. We've got a really exciting event tomorrow as well, so look into that. And of course, as always, come in and buy books. We want to see you. Let us know that you were here. And I think that is where I'm going to leave you all. So thank you once again, both of you, for being here. This was such a great talk, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. This is really a pleasure. Bye, y'all.